All right, my GoPro is kind of shit in the bed. So after three failed battery attempts, the file system keeps going out and stuff like that. So I'm switching over to my phone, and I'm also putting it on the tripod and sitting in front of me. So I hope that it doesn't. I hope I don't kick it too much. Because anytime this thing moves, it's loud. So I really apologize ahead of time. All right, here we go. So I just finished this book. Abdul Alhazred's Necronomicon by this gentleman. And there are some parts of this book I really, really liked, and there are some parts of this book that they were well done, but I just didn't like them. The whole book is actually really well done. I thought the end was a little odd, but we'll get to that. And some of these pages here, I just bookmarked for the artwork, which I really did like. Yeah, that was the GoPro finally turning itself off. All right. So one thing I did like was that the size of this book. I mean, this is not a small book, right? It's pretty meaty. 700, almost 50, I think, something like that. No. All right. This has 625. The electronic edition has, I think, 755 or something like that. I don't know what the differences are. It could just be the typing. Because I have both. I was actually really one of the things I really wanted to like about this book was the magical components of it, because it wasn't just the stories. We have the stories, but I really wanted to see the. It was hinted at in the reviews that the magical side of this had some gems in it for people that were into that, and I suppose for a very narrow band of people, that's true. But we'll get to that. It's my chief gripe about this whole thing, and it's a pretty serious gripe too, because I think I just absolutely missed the mark. Really well done, but I think it missed the mark. Get that a bit. What he does do is he does rewrite some of these stories and some of the scenarios in the Lovecraft style, and that is actually really, really well done. I really like the chapter layouts were pretty good. There was some other things in here that kind of bothered me a bit. Like I said, one thing you're going to hear me say again and again is it was really well done, but because this is a massive work, and I absolutely have an immense amount of respect for the work that was put into this book. All right, I absolutely do. I think the magical portion isn't usable by most people that don't already have a feel for that, but that style. But we can get to that. Really well done. It's laid out pretty well, and the text isn't too small. The art styles you can see here are done. It's kind of like based on woodcuts, right? And that style is the same throughout the book, and that's really, really, really well done. The like here were some of the artwork pieces I wanted to kind of highlight a little bit. I can't show them all because that would just not be fair, right? Really good stuff in here. They are very appropriate, pretty detailed in while maintaining that style, and they don't feel like filler at all. All right, they do add context to the stories, I think, and I was very appreciative of them. It really did give some good key points to the books themselves. Excuse me, the stories themselves, and you can see like some of the individual lines here are really, really well done, and you can see the striations here where it would be the grains of the wood, the green of the wood. So mad props for that, right? Really, really like that. It was really well done, and that's why I have these bookmarked, because these were just some of them. I mean, the book is full of the artwork too, right? Yeah, a lot of pages, but a lot of artwork in it too to give it context. And let's see the other one I want to show you. I haven't deciphered this yet. You can, of course. There are several pages of it, and if I really liked the magical portion of it, I might. I did just get some books on Sumerian, so this would be kind of interesting to me. I know it's not, but you know what I mean. I think it was pretty good. It's pretty well done. The I can't remember the name of it now. I think I put it in the Goodwill box. I'm not sure, but there was I reviewed a Lovecraft book on a forum, and it had a lot of this where you had to decipher some of the things in it, and it was simple substitution. It wasn't anything serious, and I don't know if this is or not, but I mean you could figure it out. They do have some stuff to make it a little bit more immersive, right? Like here's like some of the. Oops, sorry, I'm trying to get it right. Some of the chants and stuff, they are in the style, but there's none of them really have any translation or anything like that with them, which I suppose you can not fault, but it happens a lot. But I did notice that some of the wording, I mean, really these are just barbarous tongue imitations is really all they are, but usually the first, you'll have, one or two letters, maybe three, and then you get a, I can't remember the name of it now. Now I feel stupid. Anyways, you get a little apostrophe-like thing on there where you're supposed to either stop or intake breath, depending on the system that you're speaking in. Those are used a lot. I don't know if it's overly so or not. Now, I did want to point out, like here was one of the spells, if you will, one of the rituals, and you can kind of see. I don't know if you can or not. I don't know if it'll zoom in or not. I hope it will. Right, but you can kind of see some of them. The most of the ingredients lists are you're going to have to substitute. Right, it's not this isn't a working grimoire in itself. You'll have to substitute things, and there is some research that he's done on these, and most of these places are in the Middle East. They are usually you'll find Muslim associations with them. You'll find literary references to actual people that did produce some of these books he talks about. Some maybe they did, and nobody's put it in English or something. But at least the names, though, you can still get Latinized, I guess, versions of the names of some of these things. And some of these people did exist. Some of the places did exist, and some of the materials too. But it takes heavily from the old. From the old Muslim scholars from back in the day. I say Muslim. That's probably not right, and so forgive me, right? I had one of those books around here, but it's way on the other side of the house, and so that's all right. But like one of these things here is from a cup of water from the Styx River. So you're going to have to find what that is, or 3 grains of sand from the deserts of Sarnath. So you need to find that, or make suitable substitutions, which I'm sure you could. I mean, it's not rocket science, right? All right. I do want to show these because these are indicative of the sigils. We'll see here, second sigil, Serpent of Yith. Third sigil, Nexus of Zahar. And lastly, the fourth sigil, the Gate of Azathoth. This book uses the diaspora from the Lovecraft world. It's not true to Lovecraft alone. It's not just canon material. It's also the larger world that Lovecraft created and others added onto. So if that bothers you, then you're going to get bothered a lot in this book. I'm somewhat indifferent to it because I know that some of these entities exist. Just not quite with these names and not with necessarily these descriptions, but the forces behind some of those things that act in that manner, in those manners, in those ways that they do exist. And so that's really what I was hoping to get out of this, and it's what I was hoping to get out of the magic of this too. And if that's what you're looking for, you're going to be utterly disappointed. But these are indicative of the sigils. The type of sigils, they're very clean, very detailed. They're not really working sigils. you're going to be tracing these things with some paper. And later on in the book, he does talk about using, red tin and things like that, or a sheet of lead to make seals to call these things. And if you look at most of these drawings, then it's a little absurd, to be honest with you. You could, yeah, you absolutely could, but it's a little absurd. And I'm sure that I could draw these things out. I could trace them out, even print it out, and I'm sure that if I put energy into it, I'm going to get something out of that, right? Is it going to be the Nexus of Zahar if I do this one? Well, maybe, if that's what I'm expecting to get out of it as a magician, an energetic magician. I can energize things, and something will appear. But I have some doubts. So, all right. So some more of the artwork here. Here he talks about he's getting into the entities involved. Different ones. Nice artwork. The writing is all done in Lovecraftian style, and it is pretty good. Actually, it's really good writing. It is. There are some phrases that I think that if you read this as intently, I'll say as I did, there are some phrases, if you're like me, there are some phrases that are going to bother you because you keep hearing them again and again and again. Right? I don't need to see the word eldritch in every other paragraph or several times in a paragraph, right? I don't need to be talked about odd angles that defy the mind, and eventually you kind of get immune to hearing about how you'll lose your sanity from fear, just from the names of these things, because as a magician that works with unnamed things a lot, I'm not a stranger to fear, and it makes for really good reading. But if you're looking at it from the point of view of a magician, it's kind of hollow. Partially because you hear it too much, I think, in my opinion, and that's all that is. But you hear it a lot, and so you hear it so much. Well, there's so much of the styling. Excuse me, I'm trying to say a couple things at once. There's so much of this style and writing mannerisms of Lovecraft that the reason his stuff works is because it's left to the imagination, and he really does a good job staying true to that. But somebody like me, who's an analyst, I'm going to look at it and say, okay, and so I fill in the blanks, but I'm with it all being kind of like the bland generic wordings of things that are just ginormously large and just beyond the scale of human, and it just I would read it in smaller doses so that you don't get tired of reading some of the same phrasings and mannerisms all the time. So I don't know how long it took me to read this. It's not like I spent hours every day reading it. Some of the stuff I just got tired of looking at and skipped through. Like there's let's see if I can find it here. I meant to find it and I just forgot. There is a 20-page series of hymns to Cthulhu. And where is it? It got to the point where I'm just like, it was like reading church stuff, not like the Bible sort of things, but oh, holy Cthulhu, or praise be you who sits on whatever, and it just keeps going. Really good literary feat, but man, eventually I'm just like, all right, I'm done. I'm not. I read about halfway. I read like 10 pages of it or something like that. And literally, it's like 20 pages. But I read like half the pages on it and stuff, and I was just like, all right, I'm good, and I'm gonna move on. But it, like I said, you'll hear me say again, it was really well done. And if you're into that, that's good. I felt it definitely belonged in this book. It certainly wouldn't belong in its own. But it could belong in a book like this because the book is so varied, and it is all written in the same style. So, not that I get paid for that opinion, but okay. Some of this, though, okay, we're about to get into the parts that I really don't like. But first, let me talk about some of the things I didn't like about the other books. Actually, let me get something to drink first here. Excuse me. Okay. Ooh, sorry. I have the Tyson books, right? I don't like them. I had really high hopes for those two, and I thought they were well done. But the problem with ceremonial magicians in the Magic 4 ceremonial magicians with something like Lovecraft is that you're stuffing these things that are beyond time, beyond this galaxy, and beyond these little celestial spheres into this little contrived man-made system. And that's really all it is. It was a missed opportunity as far as I was concerned. It was a really well done series of things on here. I mean, you didn't really need to include the Mansion of the Moons, though. You can find that anywhere. There is, I did look briefly for it, and I didn't see it, but there is like an overlay of, here's where each of these entities fit in the grand scheme of things. And it was all contrived for the Earth-based system, because that's all they really think in. And unfortunately, that's not what Lovecraft is. At least to me. If you're going to talk about bigger than big, and if you're going to talk about powers that are just so far beyond what we experience here, you can't exactly say, call on Jupiter, and then expect the same result, right? You're not gonna get that. And so it's really just ceremonial magic, planetary ceremonial magic, with some Lovecraft trappings on it. And I was utterly disappointed, as I'm sure you've realized by now. But some of it he did put some thought into some of these things, so he really did. Like, there was an overlay of, like, you know, here's like Yog Sothoth, and here's right underneath is Nyarlathotep. And, you know, that's why you have to go through Nyarlathotep to get to Yog Sothoth. But then it got a little, and we're talking like from this down closer to density, right? So if this was like Earth density, you know, you'd have like Azathoth here, then you'd have like Yog Sothoth, then you'd have Nyarlathotep, and then you would have, I think it was Shub-Niggurath, and then Cthulhu, right? And I'm like, all right, well, there's nothing about why. Well, there is some stuff about why this is, but you're canning these entities that are supposed to be uncannibal into neat little boxes just to, I don't know, get some ceremonial rocks off or something. And it just doesn't work. It doesn't work. Now the spells will work. Don't you? Oh, here it is. That's why I couldn't see it. I looked at the electronic version. Oh, Mighty Cthulhu. See, this is 18, 19, 20. See. Absolutely did not plan that. Hell yeah. All right, so it starts on 327 in the physical copy here in... There, it runs to 355. So you've got about 30 pages of hymns to Cthulhu. I don't know why I would need 30 pages of hymns to Cthulhu. Maybe I'm just not Cthulhu enough. Maybe I'm just a bad disciple. Now I do have my little gateway here. And I so wanted to use it with this material. All right. All right, so here's some of the stuff that I was also trying to look at. These are like the Sigil of Mars overseen by Nyarlathotep. Again, you're stuffing these entities that are supposed to be beyond into neat little cups. You can play with them like they're sandcastles, I guess, because I don't really see the point. I mean, you've ruined Lovecraft at that point if you're stuffing him into these little boxes just like Tyson did. You know? And that's why I didn't walk the gates there, because it was all just it all just felt contrived. You know, where's the wonder? Where's the fear? You should not be calling on these entities without fear. Right? Yeah, you can have confidence, but part of you should have some fear if you're contacting these entities, instead of just, oh, well, let me put some neat little window dressing on this, and then I can play my favorite game with some new skins on it, and then the world is good. And that's kind of what it feels like, actually. You know, it's just trappings. You're just putting some new paint on it. It's not Lovecraftian, right? I guess that's my complaint. I think I've already said that. I know. What time is it? Well, 21 minutes? Man, you guys are troopers if you've gone this far. Or skipped ahead. You can see here, these sigils are not... I mean, they aren't even that... All right, here's some of the stuff that kind of irritated the shit out of me. All right, to prevent conception and capture the hearts of men. A vulture sigil of Jupiter. Why? Why? Okay, cool. That's not where it starts, though. It starts with getting rid of gnats, flies, just dumb shit. I'm sure that was big back in the day, but they also kind of had probably had better systems than we do, immune systems that is. So it's like Hermes reveals that the fox sigil created in the day and hour of Venus with Jupiter rising in Pisces. What the fuck does that have to do with Lovecraft? It doesn't. Missed opportunity. The sigils really aren't usable unless you print them out or you trace over them. And these would make for some really good standing sigils. Like if you were going to make, I don't want to say Play-Doh. I mean, you could do it with wood. These would be hard to do without some kind of a laser cutting system. These would be really hard to make metallically, right? So you'd probably have to use something like wood or clay. And even then, I mean, if you look at the detail in some of these things, these are made just to get intellectual rocks off, I think. I don't think they're really made for usage, because if you were to put your palm over them, and I have, nothing really comes out of it on its own. You say, oh, well, you haven't done it in the second hour of the third moon of Uranus or something. And, okay. Yeah, you got me there. Nice visual. But you know, I did a lot of that with the Helios Unbound stuff, because it was required. It was required to do it. So I did it. I did it faithfully. I did it to the best of my ability. And it didn't make any difference when I used it outside of that system. So no, I'm not just dismissing it. I've used it, and if I can get the same results without it, then it doesn't seem like I'm the problem. So we got all sorts of really cool shit here. We do really cool stuff. And here's where he's trying to tie in the constellations. It's kind of like almost like a saving grace. Like, oh shit, I haven't said anything about the wider universe yet. Let me pull this up for this one chapter and just kind of try to sugarcoat things. And that's really all it is, because the constellations themselves are not consistent across civilizations, right? Even in the same regions, they can differ. So he does try to give just some really nice indications of, hey, the fishes here on page 516. I'm not stealing your material, good sir. The fishes forever swimming in the eternal sea represent the duality of the spirit, the inextricable link between the conscious and the subconscious. All right. Great. What does that have to do with Lovecraft? You're not telling me anything I hear. So he's kind of trying to hint that there are things you could do outside of here, but that's really all it is. And it's really all it is because it's not developed. And it's not developed because I don't think he's done anything with it. And if he has, I would love to see it, because it might save some of the rest of the stuff. At least from my point of view. Not that he doesn't owe me a damn thing. Now, he has got me to pay for the book a couple times, and I absolutely am glad I bought the book, at least once. I bought the electronic copy because my wife was going to bed early, and I didn't want to keep her up, right? So if I'm reading in bed, she's going to sleep, I'm not going to be that jerk and keep her up all night just because I want to read some Lovecraft, right? So now we get to this part here, which is beyond the celestial spheres. This should have been the starting point. Right? Because nothing in the system before this at all has anything to do with beyond the spheres. It's kind of hinted at because it isn't known, it isn't worked. I don't know if he has any energetic chops like that, but that could be part of the problem. Because when you start to leave the comfortable stuff here, where you could just kind of consult a table, and yes, you do have to have magic, and yes, you do have to have skill. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, you have a hard time feeling spirits that you aren't looking for if you can't feel spirits. You see what I'm saying? So, and I'm not talking about the spirit's standing right next to me, and I'm not talking about there's a manifestation in smoke. You're not going to put some of these spirits in smoke, right? I mean, you could try. And I've talked about a couple times over the past couple of years of my work with Yog Sothoth, and less so with Shub-Niggurath and Cthulhu. Mostly with Yog Sothoth, and I don't honestly understand his interest. Appreciative, but I literally had to go through several levels of egregores to. I was talking about this the other day with somebody to get his attention, if you will. You're not just gonna toss some sigil on the ground and jizz your way to freedom here, right? It's not gonna work. You gotta kind of go looking for them, and then they have to want to be found, right? Now, why am I saying that? I'm saying that because it doesn't seem like anybody has gone after these entities in the way that I'm suggesting. So how are you going to get sigils? How are you going to get shortcut sigils? Which I've also talked about in some threads. I can't remember if the threads are public or not. And I don't have access to those forums anymore because I've pretty much left all of them. But you got to put in the work, and they're not just going to come because you call. You can't just, at least in my opinion, you can do whatever you want. But you're not just going to sit here and trace a little star on there, circle around there, and say you will come, Yog Sothoth, and you will like it. That's not going to work. You might get some attention, but I don't know if it's the attention kind of attention you want. Now, I have also said that my work with Nyarlathotep, he's been a bit indifferent to it. So less so with Cthulhu, which is why I have the gates for him that I've made. You can call on. Shub-Niggurath is a different beast, but you're not just gonna make some calling to Jupiter during whatever hour you want or feel you need to, and then get Yog Sothoth to come. That's not quite how it works. And I just think it's really short-sighted. I've been ranting, and it's relevant ranting, and it's actually really important. It needs to be said, because if all you do is ceremonial magic and you think you're going to pull ceremonial magic out to get to Yog Sothoth when he doesn't want to be gotten to, you're fooling yourself. You can get some egregores, though, and you have fun with those. I will, too. One thing I didn't like in here, though, is like I said earlier, that there's no reason to print out all of the 28 mansions of the moon. What's that here? The 23rd mansion. Yeah, so there's no reason to print these. There's no reason to put these in here, right? They don't seem to be. They aren't really written in the Lovecraftian style. These are just quick wordings of them. You can find them anywhere. You can find, if I recall correctly, and I may not, but if I recall correctly, you may you'll find slightly larger ones in there in the Helios Unbound one. Because literally, you are calling the 28 Mansions of the Moon at the appropriate times and the appropriate days. So you can go that route, and it's actually more involved than these little blips here. I think I already packed that book because I'm trying to start packing some of my stuff up for my my ritual space prior to moving, so I can start cleaning some of the stuff up. I mean, I've got incense soot all over the place, so and these are white walls, so I need to know if I need to paint. You know what I mean? So, all right. Anyway, so yeah, we got all 28 Mansions of the Moons here. Yeah, they can be important. If you are a ceremonial magician, you are bound to use them. Of course, you're bound to use all that stuff because I'll just leave that to myself. But there are, after you get done with all of this ceremonial magic stuff, well, I shouldn't say it's ceremonial. It's planetary magic stuff. It's part of that, right? After you get done with all this, there's one kind of glaring thing that threw me off. I was reading these last night. I literally finished it last night. And what ends up happening is, I mean, like, what are you going to use these for? You know, really cool. I mean, they can actually make for some like really good tapestries, right? If you want some backdrops for your ritual space or something like that, that would be some really cool artwork for that. And if he's not too pissed at me for this review, then I would encourage him to do that, because I would probably buy some. I really would. But obviously, I'm not saying just for me, because I've just got the purchasing power of one person. But the thing that kind of threw me off a little bit was this. So we get through all of the Lovecraft stuff, and there's some lore in there, and there are some rituals in there. There are some rituals in this book that you could follow along with if you want. And you can kind of read between the lines and figure out what you want to figure out. I mean, that's why he used place names to help you figure out what, well, they think that the world itself might be magical. But some of these things, you know, you can correlate a place name with a type of herb, and then that's what he's talking about. At least that's what I'm assuming he's talking about. He's put a lot of effort in this stuff, so I'm assuming he's done his due diligence in that area. Shit, I just totally lost my train of thought. Well, what I was getting to is that these books here at the end. So we went through all that stuff. You know, everything was kind of, I mean, it wasn't necessarily, it didn't really flow like the hymns to Cthulhu. There are no hymns to anybody else. And the book's not really, I mean, there's not really any Cthulhu worship in there outside of like savages. And that story was rewritten really well. I know it's one of those stories that needed to be kind of rewritten based on the way we perceive things and the way things are described today, right? Lovecraft gets knocked for some of his ways of talking about other, well, frankly, other races. And so I was really glad that those were actually rewritten. And I meant to say that, and I forgot. So those were rewritten, and you can find really good renditions of them in this book. So each of these books, because there's a lot of books in all these books, right? Like the book of Forgotten Lore, right? It's divided into books, and the books themselves are consistent with themselves. They aren't consistent with the other books, right? The tone, the style, the language is, but the material is not, right? Might overlap somewhat because all of these topics overlap somewhat with regards to Lovecraft and the way he wrote and how he described things in the scenery of the places that Abdul Alhazred was at, right? The stories of him anyways. So they're consistent within themselves, but the books themselves, they don't tell a larger narrative when put together. So keep that in mind, right? Because here we get at the Book of Forgotten Lore, and I was like, okay, we just spent how many, like 100 something pages on ceremonial stuff, planetary stuff that almost nobody's really going to use because it's just stuffed into a box. And what am I going to say? And it isn't Lovecraftian. You're right. And so then we get to the very end of this book, and it didn't dawn on me until today. So, like, I think at this point my chamomile tea was kicking in, and by the end of the last story in here, my Benadryl was too. So, so we started talking about. We get there, and all of a sudden we're looking at a couple new stories. I'm like, all right, well, like I said, doesn't flow. There's no reason for these stories to be apart from the other stories, and that kind of bugged me. But I was like, okay, I'm going to bed because I'm not gonna stay up all night wondering why these two stories, which I did enjoy, were it might be three stories. I can't remember. But anyways, there are a couple stories. Where's this? Delaware, right? Yeah, Delaware. Woo, East Coast, baby. I think that the reason those stories are there, and it didn't really come to me until now. Well, right before I was getting ready to do all this stuff, is because they didn't want to end the book with Planetary Magic, because half the people that read that stuff read the rest of that stuff aren't going to be interested in it. So they had to throw them a bone at the end to say, yeah, the book did really good at the end. There were some really great stories, blah, blah, blah. Because if they had just stopped at the Planetary Magic, they'd be like, what the fuck is this? Right? So that's my opinion. And now he says, now Robert Price's review here, but surely the most remarkable in this new one by Thomas. It is a really good book. It really is a good book. Totally missed the mark with the magic. But the rest of it is like really good. It's a really solid book. And if you enjoy the stories and you want to read some of the stories written in the same style, with the same level of care, I don't want to say with the same skill, because it's been a while since I've read Lovecraft, and so I wouldn't be an appropriate person to really measure that. But I enjoy them quite a bit. And I'm not a Lovecraft, capital F fan. I'm not. I've read the complete stories. I don't read any of the derivative fiction at all. It has no place as far as I'm concerned in my literary box. Hey, you do you. I'm glad other people enjoy it. But I would. This is actually is a really good book. It's really well done. So, if you like the stories, if you like that style of writing, read it slower than I did. But for the money you're paying for it, it's actually it's a damn good book. It really is. So I know I was a little bit over the place. This is 38 minutes, and that's a lot longer than I was expecting to do for this. I was expecting like 20 minutes. But you know me, I try to stay on track, and this is the result. Is instead of 20 minutes, it's 38, almost and a half by the time I finish this sentence. So take care and enjoy yourself. Screw it, let's do it.